All right, we're going. Welcome to Saints on Cinema. Josh is here, and Lance is here, and Lance is doing a little teaser for what we're going to be discussing today. If you can get a visual image of what he's trying to show.
You guys hear me breathing in my microphone?
No, you're a mouth breather. Now we can. Yeah, we're talking about that Hitler movie that came out last year. The Jojo Siwa. What was that show? That's the word.
It's awesome. You should review that.
I didn't watch it. I need to. I want
very strange. Yes, strange. Like
whatever it was. Jojo. What was it? Circus.
Jojo Rabbit.
Rabbit. Who Framed Jojo Rabbit came out like 3 years ago. Okay, let's get into this. We're talking about Dune. Now, we're gonna do a review, a spoiler review, because I have a lot of thoughts about this movie, and I have some questions about this movie. But Josh is. What was that? I didn't hear it.
None of them are going to be good. Anyway, go ahead.
There's some praise for this movie I have, but I do have some, apparently according to the 91% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, apparently I do have some conflicting views about this movie. Surprise! But
Tim only likes movies with a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes or less.
Yeah, like Beastmaster. Okay, but before we do the review, we're going to do a really quick spoiler.
A really quick spoiler?
Sorry. A quick spoiler-free. Let's just do that first. Let's just get our spoiler-free version.
Let's just spoil things first, and then we'll get on to the rest.
We'll ruin it, and then we'll finish in the rest. So, let's talk about this movie. Let's just do the spoiler-free review of, this is the critical thing. Is this freaking movie
Wait, did you just say, let's just do the spoiler? Free review!
Yeah, you guys done? If you guys complain about the length of this conversation, you guys are to blame, not me. Anyway, so
if we ended this conversation right now, I would not complain about the length of this conversation.
Yeah, you'd be excited about the length of it. Okay, Dune, 91 audience score. Stop it.
I prefer the title Arrakis.
Dune, 91% audience score and an 84 Rotten Tomato score. So we're going to give it the Saints on Cinema review. Is this movie worth seeing in the theater?
Yes.
I don't know if I have a lot. Yeah, because you're watching it at home.
Yes. I watched it in the theater. It needs to be seen in the theater, though. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because the sound is the best part of this movie. And the sound is amazing. And I watched it specifically in my home theater setup, which isn't too shabby.
No.
And I could tell a difference. Like, there were certain moments in the film where I'm like, oh yeah, that was way better in the theater. You should see it for the sound. If you have any interest whatsoever in this movie, you should see it in the theater.
Okay. Now, Josh, you want to give out your full disclosure for the background of your opinion before we get into your thoughts, or do you just want to just roll with it?
We'll just roll with it.
All right, so Josh, your opinion. So, I mean, we can hit some categories. Lance mentioned the sound. I agree. The sound design in this movie is fantastic, with one exception. I couldn't understand what the crap several of the people are saying because they mumble to themselves, and I had a harder time understanding.
Another reason you guys see it in the theater, there are a couple times where they purposely like have the dialogue very, very low on the meter, you know.
Which was a great choice, by the way. I thought it was a great choice when I saw it.
Well, I was going to say, if I had watched it on my home theater, I'd have subtitles so I could understand what they're trying to mumble under their breath. Tenet had the same problem. Tenet was like, you couldn't understand what they were talking because they were doing it in accent, speaking English, but they were talking like through really thick beards, and you couldn't understand what they were saying at the time. And I wasn't the only one that made that observation.
There's also a big difference between this one and Tenet, and that is that Tenet is just entirely confusing, period. You can't understand anything.
That's the other thing. It's like extremely scientific jargon.
Oh, wow.
I watched that movie 3 times, and I still have no idea what
you guys have no idea. You haven't seen the original Dune movie. If you want to talk about, I have no idea who's talking and what's going on.
But I want to talk to you about that when we get to your book report, because Lance has had some homework before this review. We'll get to it. This one, it was like the mother's like all depressed and mumbling to herself. Leave us. You must do everything the mother tells you. And half the time they're speaking in another language. I couldn't tell if she was mumbling in a different language or if I just couldn't hear it.
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that fear no permit to pass over me through me. And when it has come past, I'll turn the other eyes his path.
So that one part
in the movie's defense, like if Tim hears someone speaking from like New York, he can't understand what they're saying either.
But okay, sound, I agree. The sound was fantastic. The ambiance, the sound, the desert sound, the wind sound, the breathing, the dishes, the rattling, the gear, all the stuff they're doing, the mechanisms.
All the you mean all the sounds were good.
Yeah.
Especially the dishes.
All right, fine. Let's do a review the way Josh
No,
wants.
I want to know
Music
where.
was good. Acting was good.
When they had dishes, Tim.
Almost.
Because I honestly have no idea.
You
They
did
did
say
two
dishes.
dishes. She several times they sit down a little Tic Tac and their little shot glass of water, like several times. There's your dishes, and they even showed the glass on the ground after they had an attack. They showed the dishes several times.
What does
And
that have to do with sound, though? I thought we were talking about sound.
I'm saying the clinking of the plate down, and you had the one Baron eating his little buffet
That
at
was
the end
good.
of the table.
The
That was food.
the Denethor scene.
You have a wonderful kitchen, cousin.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So, acting. Lance, what did you think about the acting in this?
I was actually surprised. I had a friend that mentioned Zendaya as a terrible actor, and I was like, she's okay. And in this, she did a pretty good job. So I really like the lady that played Lady Jessica.
That the mom?
really like her. Yeah, I really like her acting.
Are they saying that she was a bad actor in this movie or in general?
Zendaya. They said in general. So
That's.
I disagree with that.
I don't really agree with that either. But
I think in this movie she didn't have anything to do because she was hired.
no.
For
So
this.
that's what's funny about this movie is in the trailer you see this, so it's not a spoiler, Tim. But at the end of the movie, she's like, "Oh, this is just the beginning,"
Right.
and I'm like, the only reason she said that is because, she wanted to make sure her fans knew that she has like 5 minutes of FaceTime in the whole movie.
And that's the thing, like, and I was watching for that in the billing. She was like very low on, which is appropriate because of the screen time. She was very low in the cast, in the billing, in the credits, and her face is not in the front of the poster. I checked that on my way out, and she's just on the side with the rest of the ensemble. Now she is a draw. She does have a huge fan base, and she has Spider-Man coming out, and so it was great that they cast her. She did good, but she was there in this movie. The next one, she's gonna have a much bigger role. I'm assuming. I love Zendaya. I am infatuated with her. I acknowledge that. That's not why I cared about this movie.
She only had 5 minutes of face. I'm just throwing that number out. It was just a low
It's
amount.
not far from.
However, she still had more FaceTime than the girl in the original movie did.
Yes.
That was the entire
right.
thing. So.
Yeah.
And still had less than Sting did in the original.
But she was here to look exotic and beautiful and enchanting to the main guy, the prince, and she did a great job with that. And that was great casting for her. Acting in this movie, you can't gauge that because she didn't do any acting until the next movie. So your friends can just chill out. But everyone else, I think, one thing I didn't think was good acting was the prince. This isn't really a spoiler. When the prince finally meets her, because he's having dreams about her in the trailer, when he finally sees her, he doesn't seem to react.
They say you're the Mahdi, but you look like a little boy. You chose the hardest way up. Follow me.
What are you talking about? He totally reacted.
Shut up. Yeah.
This is ridiculous. Like, what are you talking
Your
about?
reaction right now is a bigger reaction than he had, but he was just like, "Oh, it's you." I was like, "You've been fantasizing about this."
You're mad at him.
like,
you're mad at his acting.
Every 10 minutes we've been seeing her.
What is his name? What is that actor's name?
I don't know.
I
can't
wasn't
remember his name.
overly impressed with his acting. Like I would say, out of all the actors, he was probably the one that I was like. But I think that he has a big millennial following though.
What's his name? Do you know? You know which one you're?
You can look it up.
It's Timothy Chalamet. Chalamet.
Yeah, and I guess he's like young and sexy for girls. So okay.
That would.
Or-
I like Jason Momoa was awesome in this, and I really liked Oscar Isaac. I think he did a really good job too. He has great acting chops. I love him in.
Well, he's good in everything. Also, Oscar Isaac is good in everything.
Also, I didn't realize he was so like buff, man. When they showed the scene of him with not a lot of clothes on, and he was like, I was like, holy crap, dude, that guy lives.
Yeah, he's a great actor. He's got a good he's a charming character actor. He has a lot of great on-screen presence. He's emotional. He's funny. He knows how to hit a lot of different genres in film. I love Oscar Isaac. I'm sad I didn't watch him in anything. That he did some cool movies before Star Wars, and I've watched them since I started studying film, and he's a fantastic actor. What'd you think about?
I think hands down, Rebecca Ferguson takes the cake. She was the one that played Lady Jessica.
Yeah,
which is
she
the
was
mom.
good. She was really good. What'd you think of the Baron? Stellan.
He wasn't to me.
Ardar.
I mean, I like how they did him. He wasn't as creepy as the original Baron, though.
We'll talk
which
about
is
that.
a little bit disappointing. And to be honest, like,
but do you think he was a menacing, weighty character? Well, I mean, he was a fat character, but I mean, weighty.
So the second time I watched him, I felt like he tried to be a lot more menacing. The problem is like his face just isn't that scary. I don't think. So as long as it wasn't like a medium or a close up, it was scary. Like the way they did it, how he hovers in the air and everything was really cool, and how he like comes out of that vat of oil or whatever he's doing.
Yeah, that was cool.
But when you do the close up of him, he just looks like a silly fat dude.
Yeah. Okay, so you're talking about a lot of imagery and everything. What'd you think of the cinematography in this? Josh, how about you first this time?
I thought it was very aesthetically pleasing. Like from the very beginning when I turned it on, it drew me in immediately. I mean, like seriously, like the first, like even from the very first tagline where it was like, the very first tagline that came in, it just sucked me in, and I'm like, this is going to be awesome.
The first tagline, "Dreams are messages from the deep." I wrote that down because we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, but anyway, like that, and then it just goes right into. I just thought it was really like the first. I would say like the first 10 minutes was like really, just it
really
was very
great.
it was really great to draw you in. Like I was drawn in, and I'm like, I want to see the rest of this movie.
Okay, so it's funny that you mentioned that exactly in that point because, Josh, what was your big complaint about your viewing of the James Bond movie? It was all the trailers, right?
Oh, the latest James
Oh
Bond
yeah. There were a ton. Oh, there's so many trailers.
Yeah, there are a lot in movies nowadays.
This
don't show up. I used to show up early for movies back in the day when there weren't trailers. Now I try to show up right then because I don't want to watch Zion's Bank and like some local farmer's like video on how we should buy corn or something. And then like, but even now, like it's like you got at least 15 minutes of trailers. It's like, holy cow, man.
And the thing is with YouTube now, you've seen all of the trailers.
Yeah,
it's not like it's
Back in the day, you never had any other outlet to really see them.
Well, and plus also you used to like I don't know about if this is true for every theater you go to, but I feel like every theater I go to now has assigned seating, so you don't have to get there 15-20 minutes early. You have an assigned seat. So
now I bought my ticket online, and I started pacing myself because I don't like watching trailers anymore because I'm like, we've had this talk before on the show, but I get there between 20 and 30 minutes after the movie's supposed to start, so I can be there for the movie, not for the half hour of YouTube videos.
That has nothing to do with you being late to everything, Tim.
That's true.
A convenient excuse for why Tim is late.
I planned it perfectly that I'm 15 minutes late to every movie.
Now, James Bond, I literally went to the wrong theater and jumped back in my car and raced across to the other theater.
That's right, we did watch James Bond together.
Absolute true story. No, I didn't watch it with you. I had to watch myself because I did. I went to Sugar House and then I was like, crap, I bought it at the wrong place. And I went to the other theater and I was there in time for the movie because of all the trailers. This one, I showed up 15 minutes late. I got in there, set my coat down where my seat was, and I was like, this is a weird trailer. And it was like the movie had already started. I was like, crap. I ran out, got my drink because I wasn't going to sit through this mess without some caffeine. Went back in and then watched the scene where Jason Momoa comes out and Aquaman does his pep talk with that scene you're talking about. Or you weren't talking about, but whatever. I missed the whole beginning. I just got home. And I watched the first that first opening part up till that hangar bay scene, and it was 10 minutes. So I didn't watch the scene that Josh watched. But my point is, that was like 10 minutes into it. They must have started this movie like 5 minutes.
That first 2 minutes is crucial in understanding a lot.
Yes,
of
thank goodness I watched the other one with you because I had some idea what was going on, and that's mostly what
it
this
brings
movie
up
was for
like
me.
the way they handled the Ben Gesserit like voice command. They did a really good job in this movie. I liked it.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Josh missing the first, or Josh really loving the first 10 minutes of this movie being drawn in is probably what I needed, and I missed it. I was not drawn in. I started right when the story was.
Well, hold on a second. How can you review a movie that you haven't seen the first 10 minutes?
I watched it now. I can talk about it. I've now watched it. So back off.
Okay. All right.
And it was pretty good.
I've seen the entire movie twice, so I'll make up for any like.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, he'll fill in the. He'll cover my back, which is another moral point of this movie. Another message. Cinematography, I thought was really good though. Really good imagery, cool stuff with the desert.
There was really cool framing.
Lighting.
There was really cool framing in this movie. There were a lot of like little people and like huge
vehicles or
backgrounds or
mountains.
And I love the way they did the omnithopters or whatever they're called.
What is that?
In fact, the second time I was watching it, the little like
the dragonfly Apache planes.
If you watch the dragonfly Apache planes things you're talking about, there's this one scene the first time they get in them and go across in the desert, like on the subwoofer in the background they have actual helicopter sound. But it's like mixed into the background, so it's like a psychological thing, because that's not the sound that the omnithopters make. So it was pretty cool.
I like the stuff with the worms. The worms looked awesome, and especially when it finally came up. I'm not gonna say what.
I don't know. The first time I thought the worm was awesome. The second time I thought it was a little underwhelming.
I like it
because they didn't like really. I don't know. There's one shot where it shows his like stomach coming up out of the sand, and it's like
in the trailer.
It's like too like fuzzy to make out what it really is.
Well, and a lot of the shots you're talking about, the camera work and the framing, a lot of the shots were designed around focus, and there's a lot of times there would be things in blur in the background, and then close up front. In the beginning of the movie, there's that training sequence where the guy throws the blade at him from behind his back, and it goes and sticks into the counter next to him or whatever, and he threw it from on screen but out of focus, and then it came into him in focus. It was like interesting stuff like that. Worked really well for a lot of it.
Focus.
Oh, thanks. But there's a lot of parts that I didn't. I thought were too gritty, too dark, too. It seemed like the Solo movie, the Star Wars Solo movie, where it was like it was hard to kind of see what was happening.
Yeah, like when the Baron comes up in his cloak the first time.
Yeah.
He floats up. It was a little bit like too fuzzy. It would have been better if they. But yeah.
Well, like the first reveal of the Baron when he's like naked in the steam bath room or whatever.
You wanted that in focus, Tim?
No. I'm saying it was well done because it hid what I didn't want to see.
It's like it was too fuzzy.
But it was
I was hoping for more. I was hoping for more, and I didn't.
I bought a high definition TV so I could see this wrinkly butt. No, I'm saying it was really cool because you couldn't really see him. You could just see that it was him and he was naked, but it was like the lighting and stuff in that shot was really cool, regardless of him being there.
Yeah, it was definitely like a very moody film. The cinematography and the music and everything was really moody. However, they didn't have. It didn't seem like they had a lot of long takes though. Either the camera was always moving or like there was a lot of. I noticed that there's a lot of like I wouldn't say quick cuts, but it's very like pacey.
It moves fast with the camera work does. I mean, it wasn't like the first one that had like a 20-minute shot of the needle floating through the air or the big big casket-shaped ship flying out in the desert the first time you see the worms in the original.
Yeah, I really like how they did
20 minutes.
space travel in this one. It was sort
Yeah,
of
so
cool.
special effects is the last category. What'd you think of the special effects, Lance? Or how about Josh while Lance is drinking?
I thought the special effects were pretty amazing. The
Pretty
ones
great,
that,
right?
like what I saw, it was really impressive. Like I said, immediately as I turned it on, I immediately thought, wow, this is like very aesthetically pleasing, and it drew me in fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the visuals were really cool.
Some of the special effects I really like I said, the Omnithopter and the way they did that. The worm was, in general, was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The desert was pretty cool. That's not really special effects, but
CGI sand.
the big space battle where that was really awesome how they did it.
Yeah,
I
we'll talk about that.
didn't particularly like the way they handled Spice. It just looked too fake to me, especially like in the
It just
the
looked
very
like sun
beginning.
was hitting the grains of sand. It didn't.
Yeah,
it
like
didn't-
in the very beginning, there was like it was showing a dune, and it was like windy and blowing and you could see like these like pixie dust things, and I was like, oh, that looks stupid.
yeah.
Yeah, you could totally tell it was like layered on top of a regular sand dune blowing.
Yeah. The only shots that really bothered me were a couple, like you're talking about the close-ups of the Baron that made his face where he looked weird. Like a lot of that shot, it looked CGI. Like it didn't look like natural flesh. And I almost wish they done that with prosthetics. Like
I really like the sound of, like, I don't know if you got this, but did you get this that he has like prosthetics on him that help him float?
I saw his metallic Doctor Octavian.
And I love the sound
mechanism.
effect they had that made that, because it would like go or something, and then
a lot of Star Wars sounds in this. There's a couple of times where the ship flies by the camera and it goes boom, 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 boom. I'm like, that sounds just like Episode 1 of Star Wars. It sounds like a Naboo ship, things like that. Anyway, so before we get into spoilers, let's just get a quick final judgment. It sounds like Lance says this is a theater movie. He endorses it in the theater.
Theater movie.
Theater movie?
Yeah, it's a theater movie.
All right.
If I had to do it again, because I haven't seen it in the theater, I would see it in the theater.
You'd see it in the theater. Or if you finish what you've had.
Look, we're not talking about things like that. We're just simply saying I would see it in the theater if I had to do it again.
My vote is it's not a theater movie.
Of course it's not.
Just because.
Of course. Just because Josh and Lance said it is, so I'm gonna say
you and
it's
91% of the audience said that. That's all. That's all.
Tim is sticking to those. What is it? 14% of the critics.
9%. Okay, I'm just gonna say I don't like sitting there. I was bored. I didn't need to see that in the theater. I didn't feel
Be
like
bored.
even though yes, you feel raptured.
I could have been bored at home.
If I had seen this at home, I could understand what they were talking about, and I'd at least be a little more comfortable when I did get bored. And we're going to talk about pacing and the spoilers.
Hold on a second. I have a question with that. So if you, because I've never done it, if you do the 30 days, like if you do the thing, do they have subtitles day one?
Yeah, subtitles are there.
I'm pretty sure they
Oh,
always
really?
do. I think
They're
they
there.
have to by law.
Because if I remember correctly, when Disney Plus did Hamilton, I wanted to turn on subtitles and they didn't have them available day one.
So maybe not subtitles, but they have. I'm pretty sure legally they have to have closed captioning.
Is probably that.
Interesting.
Anyway, it's there because I had to go to pull out a quote that we're going to talk about when we start our spoilers.
Yeah, try turning on your remote button. Probably has a closed captioning button.
It's on HBO. It's already there on HBO. Anyway, so we'll have to go the majority on this one. I have to be on the outside, I guess. We're going to give it a celestial rating.
Tim is
but this
generally
is
in outer darkness.
This is what I don't understand though, Tim. You said that you really like the cinematography, you really like the sound, but you don't think they should see it in the theater. I mean, aren't those two giant reasons why you want to see a film in the theater?
Yes, the experience would be better in the theater, but the question is, do you need to go see this in the theater? No.
That's why I don't understand.
Because I don't think
I always
people are
complain about Tim's like theater rating system.
I don't understand why someone enjoyed this movie. If I saw this,
enjoying a movie and whether or not that's what I'm saying is enjoying a movie and whether or not it should be seen in the theater are two separate things, though.
I know. And in some movies, it's a higher praise would be a telestial rating for it being unstreamable, like Bill and Ted 3, you know.
Or like
that.
you talked about what was the Jason Bourne movie? How like it was a great movie, but probably not a good theater movie because it was always the quick like whatever they call it, the steady cam, only not so steady cam.
Wait a minute, Tim, are you trying to
Handheld.
say Tim, are you trying to say that you didn't enjoy this movie?
No. You guys, I was texting you during the movie. You know how bad it is when I pull out and turn on my phone in a theater?
How many people were like in the theater thinking, "Oh, who's the idiot that's like texting people in the middle of this film?"
The only reason I pulled my phone out is because the way this theater is at Century is you have like a wall behind you. No one was around me. No one could see it. And the first thing I do is dim the light when I turned it on. But it takes a lot.
If you were that lady that was annoyed by Tim's cell phone in the movie theater, then comment below, please.
Yeah, there were a lot of old people. The like 20 people in the theater. Most of them were old. I was like, did you guys love the original or what? I was like trying to figure this out.
They did. Well, I've heard people say they like the original, and I don't get that.
All right, so Celestial.
By the way, I hated the original, but yes, it is a a theater movie. You should see the original in the theater.
I have not seen the original, but I would say this one is a theater movie.
All right, fine, theater movie. So let's go into spoilers. Before we go further, though, Lance, you had a book report. We watched the original, and then you wanted to have time. We watched it a while ago, and I just put out the review over the weekend. So you had time to read the book, and you busted out what 600 pages that crap is.
It was 800 pages.
800 pages in 2 weeks, and now we watched this one twice.
Let me read you my book report.
So Lance, I can't even conceive how many hours of Dune that you've ingested in the last month, and I couldn't handle it. I did not care about this world. We went to FanX last month. And Kevin Anderson was there. He was a great Star Wars and fantasy or sci-fi author, and he's a big Dune publisher or author right now. And you're like, it's really big. And half those questions in that panel were asking him about Dune. And now having seen both versions of this movie, I'm like, I don't get the appeal. This is not an interesting world. So you read the book. You let me know. Like what?
I don't know if I'm the best because I've never been a huge Dune fan, and I read it in high school, and so this was a reread, but I can't remember anything. I just remember in high school I thought it was pretty good. And I read the trilogy in high school because I think the original author wrote the trilogy, and then I think he might have written some more books. I think someone told me 6. And there's like 20, 30 books now.
There's a lot.
But so first I watched the movie with Tim, the original, and let me tell you that movie is terrible. So I sort of just like forgot.
As an adaptation, you mean?
Yeah.
Or you just mean it's a bad movie? But how is it?
Well, it was a bad movie. It was actually. No, I don't know. After having read the book, I saw a lot that was different.
Okay.
Like the original movies, that stupid voice thing where they're like voice weapon and that whole rock. That's not, and that never happens. They don't have this voice thing, at least not in the first book. Maybe that's comes later.
It comes later. Yeah, because that didn't really work for me in the battle sequences as we talked about. It was really dumb.
This movie, after seeing it the first time and thinking back to the book, I was like, "Holy cow! This is a really faithful adaptation of the book."
This one. Okay, so this is my first question about the book then. In the first one we watched, we were really confused and criticized all the telepathy, the internal monologuing versus their communication.
And that's very interesting because in the book, and you don't see this a lot in books nowadays, they seem to be more popular. It seems to me like earlier in literature, but they like. So usually you have a point of view character for each chapter in this kind of story.
Yeah.
But he does, Dennis does actually have internal thoughts for different characters within the same chapter. Where usually an author will be like, okay, this chapter is from this point of view, and then they'll have another chapter from a different character's point of view or whatever.
Was it
this
hard
one
to
is
follow?
very much, because in that format it says who's thinking it. Where in like the movie format, how do you? That's our problem.
Can't
We
tell.
couldn't tell who was
We
thinking
could
it
tell, yeah.
because they did voiceovers and everyone's voice sounded the same, and you're like, wait, who's talking right now?
Right.
And then
So
on
in this
top
one,
of
a
that,
lot of the communication between the people that were using telepathy in the original were doing the weird sign language thing. So I don't know if that's offensive to people that sign,
I don't think they did that, and that's not in the book.
So that's what I was
going
going
to
to ask. In the book, when they were like on the ship, when they were hostages, did they communicate with each other through telepathy like they did in the first movie, or sign language like they did in this movie? You said no sign language. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess you're right. So I guess maybe the sign language did become their telepathy.
Because that's how
really
they
think about that.
communicated secretly. Because there was no telepathy in this movie, thank goodness, because that was really sloppy. Not that
So
you
yeah,
couldn't do it.
that's the one thing that's different because I don't remember sign language.
We talked about the telepathy in the Lord of the Rings works. You know exactly who's talking to who because they know how to work a camera because that had a good director compared to the original. Lynch was not a great director in the first one.
Yeah, like the angles would have told you who's thinking and stuff.
Instead of having 3 people in frame, but you don't see anyone mouth moving, but you hear like a bunch of people talking. Like what? Anyway.
And that brings up a good point too. Like one of the things that's different in this movie or in the movie with the book is I don't like how they handled his visions.
In this one?
Like he did have them in the book, but in this new movie, like I felt like his visions were a little rough. Like,
do you know why?
Not just his visions, but the way the spice affected him. It was sort of weird. I didn't necessarily like the effect of the spice.
Well, this is my problem. And Lance and I just watched the final, what was the movie? The Last Duel, right? Last Duel?
The Last Duel.
And in that movie, the way they, so I guess spoiler for the formatting, but they show, the movie is in 3 chapters, and they show the main story, and then they show the main story again from a different perspective. So you see those same scenes again, but it's interesting and you're not bored. And then you do it a third time. So you have 3 main characters and you watch the same main scenes 3 different times from each person's perspective. And it's very interesting. And Lance and I talked about that in our review. This one, we had the same images of the vision like 6 or 7 times, and they were the exact same. And
they overdid
we had to finally get there and watch it happen in real time. And I was like, I was so bored by then.
Yeah,
well,
really again, I wonder if part of that is like we paid Zendaya a lot, and she has a lot of fans. We better like.
In this film, maybe the second one,
it was there to shots of her.
We got
the slow shot of her in a transparent white dress.
Yes.
We got a slow shot of her face. And
then her and her little
walking in the desert and blah blah.
So
and kissing. There's a
trailer to
kissing
get the
scene.
people in.
Yeah.
It slowed it down because every 5 minutes it went back to those shots. Like, we get it. And they had how many angles of a bloody knife did we have to see in this movie with very little knife action when it finally happened?
I sort of get what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it, for people who haven't seen the movie, they were trying to make it look like, okay, Paul Atreides has these visions, but things don't happen exactly the way he sees them. Because in that vision, he dies, right?
Right.
Spoiler alert. He dies, and then in the real thing, he doesn't die. He beats the guy in the night.
Well, he says, like, and I thought because I didn't realize this was a 2-parter because I never saw part 1. Because
I didn't say that. I just knew because I'd read the book and I knew generally where we were following.
Right.
Had you seen the first 10 minutes, Tim, you would know.
That's what I'm saying. I just watched. I'm like, oh, that would.
Does it say part 1 in the first 10 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah,
it did. When the title comes up, it says part 1. Had I seen that, I would have been a little less upset about the pacing.
Well, this is my question though. Is I think that from where it falls in the timeline, there should only be 2 parts.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how they would make this into a trilogy.
Well, it's already been signed on for a second movie.
Well, they
but
could hire Peter.
Is it going to be a second movie, or are they going to try for a third? Is my question.
They could hire Peter Jackson, and he could stretch it out into 3 movies. Okay, so that was the thing. I didn't realize it was a 2-parter, and there was a little world building that would have maybe lowered my tension, not tension like there was stakes in this movie, but my annoyances throughout the film.
Well, and what's interesting, and
probably not.
In fairness to the guy who wrote the original Dune movie, well, I can't remember his name, but he said that he needed 2 movies to do, and he really did. I mean, that's what's weird about Dune is it doesn't really fit very neatly into a movie format. And
Yeah,
because you've
sure.
got a lot of like mental things going on. And that's the thing. What's really cool in the book, one of my favorite parts of the book is when he interacts with the spice for the first time, and he goes into this plane of existence where time and space are like different for him. The way the book describes it is really amazing. The way the movie like tries to do that, like they did an okay job, but you
At
don't
no
have...
point did I realize he was being affected by the spice. Until you're talking about it right
What?
now, I had
It
no
says
idea.
that in the movie.
Huh?
It says
you-
it. The
I know they
dialogue
mentioned
reveals
it,
that.
but
Well,
I just,
Tim, we know how you are at following plot.
I
So
know.
I mean, that's part of
first
it,
to admit
right?
it.
Well,
But guess what?
but it
I
is...
could follow this plot. I followed exactly what was going on, and if it wasn't for
That's
watching
not
the
true.
first
You
one
didn't see the
last-
first 10 minutes. How could you
No,
follow
but
the
I knew.
plot?
That's what I'm saying. Because I had already watched it, most of me watching this movie was like, "Oh, this is that scene that I saw with Lance and we talked about. Oh, this is that scene that we saw with Lance. Only it looked way better." And it was
very cool too how like one of our problems with the original movie was we couldn't tell like which faction was which, especially
Yeah.
during the fights. It's like one guy with a garbage bag over his head fights the other guys with the garbage bags over their heads. Like the costuming was terrible in the fight scenes. And this one you could tell because the Baron's army was black, the Zadakur or whatever they're called,
The Imperial guys were
were white. And the Imperial guys are really cool, by the way. The way they did like the Imperial army was really cool.
So that reminds me of some Star Wars stuff, and we
Well, of
had this
course it
conversation.
Does
So let's
it
talk
also-
about the Last Jedi.
Months ago.
Yeah, does it really
That
remind you of The
reminds
Last Jedi?
That reminds me of The Last Jedi. Let me tell you about how terrible Ryan Johnson
Yeah,
is.
Ryan Johnson. It reminded me a lot of Ryan Johnson, that first movie, and this is
No, this is in part of Lance's book report. So we talked about when we did the first review that the book was back in what, the 70s, right? It was 70s or 60s. Do you remember?
yeah, I thought it was earlier than that.
40s.
Okay, whatever. Long before 70s.
Dude, I don't think it was
1918.
1965.
Okay, 65 the book comes out. The movie came out in 84, and then this version. Star Wars came out in 77. So we were
Yeah, did you see the use the Force Luke part in this movie?
No. What do you mean?
When he's flying the ornithopter into the storm.
Oh,
Then he's like, oh, I have to let
gotta
go.
let go. And he turns off the
He
wings.
turns it off and just...
And crash lands like hello. Well, there's that. So there was a line there's a line where she says we have powerful friends, and I was like, oh, is this she talking to Jabba the Hutt? The Imperials were in white. And they talked about the Emperor who's over the Imperials, and there we had the Princess in Dismay things. There was
Man,
water-
that's what I hate about it, dude. The best part of, like I said, the best part of the original movie was that hot princess girl in the beginning. And this one, the Imperials come down in their ship in their beginning. I love that part too, where he's like, "Hear ye," or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, they covered if the princess is there, she's like covered in one of those masks. I want to see her.
Well, anything else you want to share about the books, or should we just talk about some of the specifics in the movie that I have some thoughts
There
about?
are some things about that it didn't do the same as the book. So I'm just curious if like huge fans of Dune, like the super fans, uber fans who've read the books like multiple times in the entire series,
If they're
I'm curious
criticizing
how
it.
they feel. Yeah, because it's like when me and Zach, our other friend, are huge Tolkien fans, and we read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings like 5-6 times at least before the movies came out, and we could totally immediately know where, oh, that's not the same, and for a long time I wasn't as much so, but Zach was like, I hate those movies, they're so different from the book. So I wonder how this is like that. Like, I'm not a huge Dune fan. I read the book, but and it was close enough for me, but I wonder if like the super uber Dune fans, how they feel about how close it was.
There was a lot of people that loved and hated a lot about the Lord of the Rings movie, just like to those fans, for inaccuracies. But you have to change it to make it a movie, to make it visual on camera. And writing a screenplay is very different than writing a novel.
I mean, Dune has been a challenge to make into a movie for
Yeah.
decades. Like they've
That's a
been
fair
like
point.
no, and that's why Universal didn't say, "Oh, we're gonna make a second," because they wanted. They're like, "Oh, here we go again, Dune. We'll see how this goes."
All right.
So,
Let's talk about a few specifics.
Before you guys on, I have to go put my kids to bed. So it's good to talk to you guys. Good luck with
Okay.
the spoiler.
Thanks for your endorsement of this movie. It was a tiebreaker that we needed, apparently.
Yeah,
I needed
I'm glad.
Josh.
I'm glad I was here to review Dune. I'm glad I reviewed it. Bye.
All right.
see you,
Okay,
Josh.
thanks, Josh. All right, so a couple of things. One, I want to talk about some of the propaganda in this movie. One, he had to get his vitals tested, like he had like a COVID test before he went to go see the Queen. I thought that was kind of interesting how she was like touching all of that. And then she goes in, and this
I don't
scene.
think that was like hinted
No, of course not. That was a joke. But this scene was really interesting, and this is one of a couple of the scenes that I thought were done better in the original. The scene where he goes and he meets what is she, the Empress or whatever, whoever she is, the grandmother or whatever. The scene where he goes in there and has the little hand test.
Queen Mother or whatever.
Yeah.
The Dark Pope.
Now explain to me real quick. She's a different group that has these visions and these mystic powers and stuff. And the kid's mother was one of them, but wasn't the wife of Poe Dameron.
Yeah,
what's his name, Isaac?
she was the wife. Lady
She was
Jessica.
the wife?
Well, she wasn't the wife, and I was actually worried about that because I was wondering if they were never going to mention it in the movie, and I was like, that's a huge theme in the book, especially at the end, which you won't get to in the second movie. But yeah, I was like, dude, are they not going to establish that she's his concubine? But he does say, he leans over and says
when
that
he's
she's
laying in her
married.
lap, he says, "I wish I'd have married you" or something.
And then I was thinking, well, did they ever establish though that she was his concubine? And they actually do. There's a scene where the Baron says, "And your concubine" or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, he says that. Well, in that scene where he goes in there, that's one of the very bad mumbling scenes where I couldn't understand half of, especially because she's trying to whisper to him, and so like she's trying to keep her voice down. But
Well, and he was trying to do. You talking about the Emperor?
No, well, him talking to in the scene with the hand test, the mother is telling the prince very quickly, just do what she says, because she's about to be kicked out of the room, so she's trying to talk fast, but she's also trying to whisper.
Leave us. You must do everything the Reverend Mother tells you.
And so, like, I couldn't understand a freaking thing she said. And so she gets kicked out, and she's like, oh, she'll guard the door. I'm like, how's she going to guard the door? Because I missed the opening scene. I didn't realize she had these powers. And then he, like, pulls her in, and then he has this is the interesting concept where he has her put the hand in while she's holding the pin. I don't remember the pin in the original. Was that in the original? Or was it?
Yeah.
It was there?
And it's in the book.
So she has the threat that if you pull your hand out, that is falling into your natural instincts or whatever, and then that's more like an animal. We need to trust that you are going to be able to handle having control over your impulses, or else we're going to kill you. Yeah. Now, it's not just some critical test, because later on...
And this is the thing about another... Like, everyone thinks that this book is, like, really deep and really, like, psychologically awesome, and I'm like, like, what I'm saying is I think the book Dune, at least the first one, is way overrated. So I'm not a huge Dune fan. I think it's a good book. I just don't think it's that smart. And this is one of the parts where I'm like, yeah, I really don't think that's that smart. Their little famous test where he sticks his hand and like, I mean, it's okay, but it's not that like, oh, this mind-blowing.
Oh, like the Matrix. Like, oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. Well, he has a hand in there, and he doesn't move. Now, I gotta say, first of all, the first one, watching all the blistering and the melting and everything of the hand in the original was freaking amazing, and you had to do that with prosthetics. They didn't have the special.
I agree. I actually agree. They did that better in the first one than they did in this one.
This one, it just showed him going like. And then it would cut outside the door and be like, "Ah!" And he cut back inside. He's like, he cut back out to the mom. He's like, "Ah!" And she's like, "If you make a noise, I'm gonna kill you." And then it cuts outside. He's like, "Ah!" It's like, Okay, and then it starts showing images, and I thought it was just waiting for it to get more intense. But then the test was over. I was like, wait, what?
And that's what I wonder is if they realized that the test wasn't as cool as the books thought it was, and so Dennis, the director, was trying to make it like more than just, oh, his hand is starting on fire. Because it does show all these images. It's almost like he goes into a trance state or something.
It takes a while.
Yeah. And that wasn't
like
in the book.
Like
he doesn't go into any trance state in the book that I remember. He just like puts up with the pain in the book.
Yeah.
And that's how it is in the original movie. And this one, I think Dennis realized that it's sort of corny, and so he tried to make more out of it.
At this point, you got to give us something to look at. You have the opening sequence when you show that little combat in the beginning, which was cool. Then you have a hangar bay conversation, dad and son having a conversation. You have a few political, bureaucratic conversations, and then you have this scene. You need something to like spice it up a little bit, and I think it was a missed opportunity because I did not give a crap.
Oh, you wanted it? Well, it did show the burnt stick. That looked like
that's what I'm saying. It looks like
yeah.
from Terminator 2 when Sarah Connors has the vision of the A-bomb going off or whatever, like, and it shows people like, psh, only it was just like a hand for just a second, like all crispy. I'm like, I could have done that effect with a Halloween prop from the Halloween store and like just put it on fire.
Yeah, but actually the best part of that scene, that entire scene, I think, is again Jessica. Because she's like, I'm going to put my son in here and he might die. And I love her reaction shot when she comes in and she's like not sure if he's dead or not.
Yes.
She looks up just like a mom would, like trying to brace herself for whatever.
And he as soon as she goes, come, she's like already got the door open. Like she was there like just waiting, like instantly in there. I like that. And then he goes, and then there's a funny little line that she says, and I put it in here. Something to the effect of, or she tells him, the queen lady tells the son that the reason for the test was because you're going to inherit too much power, and we need to know if that you can handle it, or if not, we got to kill you. She says that to the mom, and she says the interesting line: "There's so much potential is wasted in a male." I was like, well, this is not a ordained women kind of a campaign from this movie.
No, that's from the original. That's from the book.
But I understand that, but I'm just like, what is the message here? Because there's two thoughts. One, it's the concept of like it's true and it's just a statement. Now let's move on with the story that there's so much power, like women could have handled that better. I'm not saying they could or couldn't, but I'm saying, were they just making that statement?
So what happened? And they brushed by it in the movie, but in the book, of course, it's more front and center. Is Lady Jessica she's one of the Bene Gesserit, and it doesn't really mention how. Maybe it's like gene manipulation, but it seems more like it's like breeding. They allowed certain people to breed so that they could create a Messiah type character who had the perfect genes of breeding, and
which is why they're eliminating some with the test.
Yeah, and she was commanded to have a daughter, but instead she had a son. So somehow that hints that they must have been able to control genes, right? Because they could control the sex. And she had a son, and the reason she had a son is because she thought, and basically she wanted us to be the mother of the Savior. And they were like, they'd manipulated genes for they mentioned we do things in centuries or whatever. For centuries they had manipulated genes to eventually have the Savior, but they didn't plan for her to have it.
That concept is how they opened the Man of Steel movie too, and it didn't work very well for that plot either. But this one I thought was different because at the end, he being a man, projecting into the next movie, he's gonna become the king and restore the planet, or whatever. I guess spoiler for the second movie, but like he's gonna overcome and prove wrong that he does have control.
It's not a spoiler alert, and that's the thing I keep telling people about Dune. You read the book, and it's the same as the movie. It actually tells you what's going to happen in his visions. So, and I think that's one of the reasons in his visions in this one, he has visions where things happen differently than the way he saw it. That's actually not that way in the book. In the book, he has certain visions where he's like, he sees exactly what's going to happen. But then there's certain points, especially that fight, where he's like, oh, I didn't see this in my dream, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But he's seen that he's gonna take over and be the king of Iraq, as he saw
he sees the water and everything.
Yeah,
So what do you? I mean, what's your interpretation of that? Because I have a conflicted message. Is it that he proved wrong that men are also as awesome as women would have been with their impulses, or was that just like not the fulfillment of him becoming who he is as the Messiah guy? Was that just like not supposed to be regarded in this scene where it was all about that we waste so much potential on men? Like, what do you think is the message from the book, even?
Well, it doesn't. It's not really like a man versus woman thing. I didn't get that.
It's a
out
very
of the book.
straightforward dialogue.
In this movie, it does. It does push that out though. So it was way more prominent in this, I think, than.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. I guess the second one. We'll see if they come back around to that concept in the second movie when he does establish, or it does.
You gotta realize that this was written in 1965, like you said. So a lot of these themes. That's another one that's interesting, is the homosexuality theme didn't come out in this one. It did in the original movie, it did in the books, but they took it out in this one. And I think it's the way they portrayed homosexuality as evil, because the Baron was like he had his concubines were like male, and I think they didn't want to like, in our day and age, they didn't want to like portray homosexuality as like only what the evil people did. In the book, though, so this is another one of those themes where like maybe they were starting to like, feminism was new and starting to like become a thing, and so they touched on it like briefly, but they didn't really go into it. So yeah, I that's my guess.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's dated now. They're just trying to like just kind of make it more politically correct for the modern audience.
Oh, I think they tried to like really make it a bigger thing in this one, because it's
for the sex stuff,
nowadays.
and not the gay stuff.
Right? Yeah, the feminism
gender stuff. Okay. Well, let's get on to the planet. The next scene I really liked. I did like the training sequence, which was again, he's like sitting there. The prince is fighting the dummies. The guy comes in. The trainer comes in and he's like, "Oh, you're right." He's like, "You aren't watching the door." And he's like, "I can hear your footsteps." And he's like, and then he like suddenly appears behind him. Or no, later on he throws his dagger and then he like appears like behind him. It's like he totally snuck up on him. Yeah, it was a really good scene. Except for then they start with this this shielding technology that we'll talk about. But I thought
they had that in the original movie too. But
yes.
And in the original movie, it was actually sort of cool because it was in a time where they really didn't have that great of CGI, and they used it. And I actually like the way they handled it in this new movie too.
Yeah,
I was wondering about that.
They spent, seriously, I bet you could clock it and find about 10 minutes of dialogue talking about water filtration systems and how much it takes for you to sweat and pee in a day, and how long a palm tree lives, and all that stuff. All this crap about your suits and your gear and all that in this world building that they're doing, which is fine, but they don't spend any time explaining how certain people can fly and how the shielding works. Because from my opinion, what I saw, he like whacks his hand a few times and he goes blue and then he goes red. Red, I guess, meaning it's vital. And so it's like, well, what's the point? Because if you hit someone like in the throat, it goes red, but like it still hits them. It's a vulnerability.
And that's interesting because you haven't read the books, but the books describe what's happening, and so.
But what's happening? That's what I'm saying. In the movie, they should explain
when you hit someone with the shields, if you hit them too fast, then it's blue and it's being deflected completely. If you slowly, and they did a good job of it, if you slowly cut in, like if you go at a certain pace, there's like a special pace that if you go in, it will actually go through the shield. And that's what the red is.
That's how shielding works in Star Trek. Like, but they didn't have any dialogue explaining any of that, which is it critical? No. But they spent a lot of time talking about like drinking your own urine later on. It was just a second. And tell me what, because they had a lot of visuals and him little tapping tests and stuff. And later on, there's a lot of times where he's like, "Oh, my shield is out of sight." Well, it doesn't matter because even if he had the shield, the little needle goes right up to his eye, and the king can still get stabbed.
But
he
didn't have his shield then. That's why he looked over and he saw his shield.
But I'm saying, but they took a point as if it mattered if he had it, but apparently not, because if the thing came really slow, which it did, like what's. Whatever.
That's the other difference between the book. One of the other differences between the book and the movie. In the first movie, they actually were closer to the book, in that little thing, the hunter killer or whatever it's called.
The robot thing, yeah.
Yeah, it in the book, it's like he has to just not move. Like he can't breathe and can't move at all, and then that thing won't be able to see him, which is another interesting thing, because again, that's sort of stupid, the way we understand technology today. In 1965, it probably worked, but we're not that stupid anymore. Like that's not how. But in that one, the way Dennis handled it was it had him actually in like a holographic forest, so like maybe it couldn't see him very well, or something. I think he was going for that. And then
the guy comes in from the side door, and all of a sudden it shoots at him anyway. And then he'll like, did he catch it or grab it? And he smashed it?
Well, according to the book, he grabs it and slams it into the wood post next to the door to basically stop the needle.
No idea what was going on. I mean, it's just like, how did this work? And like, what was it? And then they're like, oh, we found the guy that was piloting the drone in like the sewer pipe or something. I was like, well, okay, just like brushing.
Yeah, and according to today's technology, we'll be like, well, why didn't he just have a camera on the little thing? You know, so it's one of those things where it's like, who cares?
Yeah,
doesn't
the guy
really work.
In the two has like VR goggles and everything. It's like okay. Anyway, I was just like, it's hard to care about the tension if you don't understand what's really happening, what the physics are, what the device is, and so. Did it really matter? No, but I'm just like, in this movie that had a lot of time talking about a lot of fluids and volumes of fluids and the effects.
And it's interesting. I mean, when you make a movie, do you make a movie so that a new person coming into it can understand it, or where it's like this, where it's like a cult classic, do you make, or just a classic? Do you make a movie targeted towards the people that have read the book? You know, it's one of those hard things. And the answer is you make the movie targeted mostly towards the people who have read the book, because they're the ones that are gonna pay for movie tickets, probably more likely than just some rando coming in and
no, that's why you cast Zendaya and put her little flashback her vision throughout the movie and all over in the trailer, because that brings in the audience, because you think this is a Zendaya movie. Anyway,
don't worry, Tim, this is just the beginning.
I wasn't disappointed in that. So I mean, I'm texting you because I didn't see that it's part one. In my brain,
that's because you're too old to stand a chance with Zendaya, Tim.
That's not the point. I don't care about Zendaya. My point was I wanted to get through this movie, but I remembered the plot points coming up, his events, and that's why I thought the whole vision with him and the sword was the sacrifice part later on, where he's like, it's like someone handed me the dagger, but I didn't kill myself. I didn't use it. I don't know what the vision was. I thought it was talking about his sacrifice later on, and I'm like, we haven't got there. We haven't got to the training. We haven't met Zendaya. We haven't had their relationship. We haven't had the final assault. We haven't had him taming the sandworms. And I was like, this really exactly. I was like, we gotta get going, guys.
Well, and again, that's what's interesting to me about this movie, especially also looking at how many people liked it outside of me, outside of you. Like, it's done so
91%.
that I'm surprised, because it doesn't follow the 3 acts formula.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like in terms of like the valleys and peaks, it's completely off, and that's what amazes me. And that ending is way, like, it's not very cinematic.
So we can talk about that. Okay. Lance, I want to talk about this, because I was comparing this to The Lord of the Rings. We should have talked about this before Josh left, because Josh has mentioned several times, I don't think he's seen even the first Lord of the Rings all the way through, because he always gets bored and falls asleep or gets distracted.
So is my wife, so there you go.
You can't finish it. Now, there's a lot of people that feel that way because they think it's boring. I can watch every moment of extended footage of The Lord of the Rings, and I love it. I will not watch the theatrical versions because I love everything that's not that's not put in there.
I'm the same way.
It fills it in.
My wife is like, "Can we watch The Hobbit again?" Everyone else hates The Hobbit. My wife's like, "Can we watch The Hobbit again? That other one's boring as crap."
See, I like The Hobbit too, and the extended cuts. Everyone's like, "Oh, we don't need 3 movies. I want the 45-minute cut of it." I'm like, I don't mind it. There's some stupid stuff in the last movie for sure, but I can handle slow plot, slow world building. The original Star Wars, it's like 45 minutes before you meet Luke Skywalker.
I like The Hobbit. The first Hobbit is Hobbit the comedy. The second Hobbit is Hobbit the elves, and the third Hobbit is Warhammer, the board game.
Yeah,
I like all 3 of those things. You know what?
Yeah. I just don't like all the Legolas stuff in that final all that weird, goofy, crazy stuff going on in the third part. It's too much for me. Anyway, so this is my thing. Some people like can handle that and enjoy it, and I'm one of those people. I can watch a slow developing movie. The first 3 Star Wars movies, all of the extra footage and the deleted scenes that they had on the Blu-rays and on the DVDs and stuff, I was like, I would have loved to see a cut of that movie with that in there because it's nice and it kind of builds the world for that. In this movie,
you think there'll be a director's cut of this movie? Where
I don't want it. That's my point. This one should have been a theatrical cut, and then all the book nerds that you're talking about, let them watch the extended version later. I don't need to watch.
I don't. Well, I'll tell you why they couldn't do that, and that's because again, this was like a trial movie. So you can do that with movies that they're like, yeah, we're gonna make a trilogy for sure. But Dennis had to make it in a way where he could prove to them that it was worth having a second movie. So he couldn't have waited. Okay. What I'm saying is he couldn't have waited for a director's cut because they would just be like, no one likes this movie. You don't get any more money to make the second one.
I disagree because Aquaman was in the same boat. After Batman v Superman came out, everyone was mad. Aquaman was coming out, and they kind of crammed in like 2 or 3 movies worth of plot into the Aquaman movie. And then it did really well, but now it's like, hey, but we already kind of crammed all this stuff with the several characters and different plots that kind of made it bloated. It was like a 2.5-hour movie as well that should have been extended into 2 different movies.
I can't help you because I didn't like it.
I love it, but you understand what I'm saying. It was very successful, but I'm saying It was a bloated movie because they didn't know if they were gonna get a third movie because the DCU movies were not doing.
But that's what I'm saying. Like Dune really, that's what happened in the first movie. They crammed everything in it. It was just plot, and it was stupid. Like, they didn't have enough time. Well, and of course, they claim they didn't have enough time, but then they spend 10 minutes popping zits or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So, but even if they didn't do that, like, it would be hard. I mean, that movie was, like 3 hours long?
It was long.
Even if they cut out some of that fat, it would have made it just worse because it was way too fast.
I submit that this movie absolutely could have been a 2-hour movie without a lot of the crap that was extended and drawn out. They have the night attack and then the people escape just to go into a bunker to get attacked just to escape. Okay, we didn't need that whole sequence. Have that for a deleted scene in the extended version. Stuff like that.
I mean, there's a lot of fluff in it, like when he's watering the palm trees. It's like, we get it. We're in a desert. You don't need it.
And here's how many 100 men are going to die to feed this plant. It's like, okay, that's an interesting anecdote for the extended version.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
That was in the book, but it's
fascinating for those fans. But theatrical version, it was way too long to not even get to a point.
And then they could have cut 20 minutes out of it alone by not having him have 20 dreams. Like one dream or a couple of dreams would have been fine, and we would have got it. But
we got to get our money's worth of Zendaya. Yeah.
Like they could have cut out the dream.
That was my problem with the plotting, and if I had known this was part 1, I would have been less like, where's the finish line? Because all I could do is think about all these things that haven't happened yet, and it's taking so long to get there. That's when I pull out my phone and check my email. I checked my stock prices. I text you guys and nothing was going. I didn't miss anything. Nothing was going on.
I don't understand that because I saw this movie at 10:30 at night. So if anybody should have been like, "Come on, guys," it would have been me. But I don't know. I just really got into the mood of it, and it is a slower movie. I wouldn't say it's slow. It is a slower movie. And the pacing is this is why I'm very surprised it did so well, because the pacing is very odd and it doesn't follow the traditional movie pacing.
It comes to a halt, and then it has like a 1-minute action scene, then it comes to a halt for like a half hour, and a lot of conversations, a lot of flying around the desert and talking about the desert, talking about our filtration systems, and then a little short action scene. Now, we could talk about that well, we were talking about the ending. I'm just saying, for me, at the end of the first Lord of the Rings movie, this was my point. You have that big epic, that big huge battle with the Orcai, which, as I understand, wasn't quite that extreme in the battle. And I read that part of the book because I was excited about it. Nothing like that happens in the book.
The Lord of the Rings is the Hobbit fights in the battle, gets clubbed over the head. and gets knocked out, and he wakes up and Thorin's dead. That's literally like it doesn't cover the battle in the book at all, hardly at all.
At the end of Fellowship, you have this big Uruk-hai attack. The Fellowship is disbanded. You have Frodo who's like on the cliff. He's like, "I'm glad you're with me, Sam." Like that same little moment, like Zendaya turning. This is only the beginning. Only you're like excited, and then it cuts to Aragorn. And he's like, "Let's hunt some orcs." And you're like, yes, you're all riled up and excited because they had a big, exciting conclusion and everything. I'm sorry, the end of the movie should have been the fight where Jason Momoa died. They should have cut it right there, and you're like looking forward to him finally meeting the princess.
Yeah, but there was a lot of time after that.
But there didn't need to be. Nothing happened. Lance, here's what happened.
No,
he gets in the ship.
You got the force scene, which is really critical.
He flies in the dragonfly ship. Crash lands the dragonfly ship, so the force didn't really do anything. He gets out, and they spend literally days in the desert camping out in their weird
worm close up.
Right. Okay, let me finish. Just to get out and him to say to his mother after, again, days in the desert by themselves, and he says, "Mom, you can't walk normally. You have to walk in this special pattern." He takes like 2 steps in the special pattern, and then the worm comes, and it doesn't work anyway.
No,
you can't tell me you can't trim that out because it was so important.
No, you aren't paying attention, Tim. He does the worm walk. They see the worm like running around them, and they keep doing the worm walk, so the worm doesn't get them. It's obviously working. Then they finally get to the place, and for some reason the worm attacks them. So they jump up on the cliff, and that's where you get that big worm scene. And then later they establish, oh, that's why. No, he says it a couple times. It's a thumper. They can hear a thumper.
They set off the thumper to pull the worm away.
No, but
that had nothing to do with
when he was doing the walk, and if you listen to the sound, you can hear the thumper. It goes boom. Yeah. Boom,
because I thought it was coming from the.
That's why they start chasing them. It's because they hear that thumper.
I got all that, but I'm just like, why we didn't? You're telling that was such a critical thing because we need to have the reveal of the sandworm. If they wanted to reveal the sandworm to have it in the trailer,
and they did have a cool part. Did you notice the guy riding the sandworm?
Yeah, that was later. Again,
no, that was at the ending.
That was at the very end.
Yeah. So that was your Lord of the Rings moment where Aragorn's like, "Let's go hunt some orc."
Yeah, that did not get me jazzed up. He turns to us, he's like, "Ooh, sand power." I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. Let's get going, guys." I'm almost out of ice. Come on.
I'm not completely disagreeing with you. Like, it definitely wasn't as epic and like exciting as the end of the Two Towers. So. But at the same time,
I'm talking about Fellowship. I've never been more excited at the end of a movie or had a hook of a cliffhanger as I was at the end of Fellowship the first time I saw it. I was like, "Wait, it's over!" And I was like so mad. I left the theater, got in my car, pulled up Facebook at a stoplight,
and then read all the spoilers.
First thing that came up was, "Oh, you're at Cinemark? Well, Cinemark just made a post. Oh, the new movie comes out 2023 in October." I'm like, "Wow, 2 years." Oh, I hope I can hold my liquids that whole time, and I don't care.
Oh, I'm excited just because, and that's the thing that's interesting, fascinating to me. Another thing about Dune is, again, with all those spoilers, you know very much that I'm a guy that doesn't believe that spoilers are actually a thing. Like, if you told me the ending to a movie, I would probably still enjoy the movie just as much.
Yeah.
Dune is very much that kind of a movie too. Like, it literally, like I said, it spoils it in the book. In the book, it tells you he has these visions. This is what's going to happen. In the book, it tells him that his dad's going to get killed. In the book, like, and all the stuff before it happens. And so, yeah, it's just interesting to me that it's proof that spoilers are not really a thing.
Whatever. I didn't.
And knowing already what's going to happen, I'm excited to see the second part of Dune.
All it did was make me exaggerated, or it made me just exasperated. I don't know. I was just frustrated and annoyed the whole time because I knew where they were going, but I knew how far of a journey it still was to go. And it's the reason I like running.
Were you hungry, or were you trying to get home or something?
It was perfectly fine. I didn't even finish my drink or my M&Ms because I was that like seriously.
I should have been there. I could have helped with that.
Okay, let's talk about a couple of cool scenes and we can wrap up. I wanted to talk about the night raid. That scene was awesome when they make the assault on the little desert Coruscant plant or area, and you have the ship coming out.
I love how they like incorporated their shields into the same technology as they did on their little like small shields.
Oh yeah.
Like the missiles come in and they're not moving quickly. They move at just the right speed to drill through their little shields on the top of the ships, and then they go red, like you were talking about, and then it explodes and blows up the.
See, you could appreciate that because you understood what the crap was the deal with the shields. I didn't follow that at all. I just thought it looked cool because they did this nighttime, and in the first shot where they show the donut hole and the ships are coming out of it, I thought all that stuff was really cool. Where they came out, they did their landing, and I like these ships a lot better than the pyramids. Because the first one they're like pyramids, right?
They're
and
weird.
This one, these ships kind of like what was that movie we saw with Jeremy Renner where they had the visitation or whatever it was, where they went up and talked to the aliens through the smoke and stuff, whatever that was. That move, that's what those ships look like. That movie, like these weird.
They use some. I also really like the way the balloons come to take out
all the stations.
Yeah. And,
we'll talk about that scene.
They use like sort of like blimp technology, like some kind of like space blimp technology. Yeah. Not only on those, but on the Empire's ships too. They're pretty cool.
We'll talk about that sequence too. But the night raid was cool because you just had the Imperials say we're gonna go out and help the white guys are gonna go help the black guys or vice versa.
They're called Sadakar.
Sure. The Sadakar are going to go help the Imperials, or the Imperials are going to help the Sadakar.
No, the Imperials are the Sadakar.
Okay, never mind then. I give up. Whoever, the black and white guys are working together. That's the point. So they go down there. And
in that battle where there's a line, that was awesome because, for one, that's how battles are actually fought in history. I've researched this, and I've researched how battles are fought in movies. Battles in movies are fought like the guy who runs out, and it says,
they clash.
Attack everybody, and they clash, and there's like skirmishes on. That is not how battles were historically fought. Battles were historically fought just like when they were marching towards each other, and then they clash, and then they start fighting.
Information.
Then those guys come and flank them, which is freaking awesome, and then they wipe them out, and that's how battles were fought. Like they were not like this wild, like Braveheart crap.
On the staircase part where the guards are fighting off the guys and I was like, oh, they have the high ground. I guess they'll win, right? And then the guys float down with their magic floating technology that I don't know why only certain people have it because they never explain this. They explain everything else, and then they land and then they kill him from the back and then they move in. You have the prince being the king being assassinated somewhere else, and Poe Dameron dies, or he gets the tooth implant, which is a bomb. That was pretty cool. But all the visuals.
Oh, that was awesome. The poison too, the way they did it is slightly different in the book. I think in the book, like he bites down on it, and the other guy like gets close, and he like isn't affected as much. Yeah, but in that one, it fills the entire room with poison in the movie.
And he's like
up in the corner, like
they come back later and find he's still alive.
That was really cool, actually.
But I like how the guards outside seal the door because like screw that, we're not gonna.
And then they come out and they're like hazmat suits. And they look up and they are so scared because they're like, "Oh crap, he's still alive."
Yeah, and they're like, "Why did you close the door?" Yeah. That was interesting, but that whole battle, like I felt the stakes. That's why I feel that would have been a better climax for the film. I felt like the tension, and you had your low points. This, like you're talking about the act structure. If you're going into a trilogy or even a two-part story, this is a part where you'd want to have everything's at the heaviest moment. The prince is dead. Mom and dad or Luke and Leia are captured on the ship or whatever as hostages. Aquaman is killed or whatever, there's all these little things that like everyone's kind of getting into the lowest points going into the next part of the movie. I guess you could say that's the lowest point, and then they redeem themselves, but there's nothing set up for what the lowest points are in the next movie. So I guess, I don't know, this is a kind of a Last Jedi kind of a feel for it, because I'm like, anything can happen. They're going to go ride the sandworms. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't believe that it has to be a 3-act structure in that.
And I could tell the movie was going to end when they're walking and you see the vista and then the music swells and you're like, and you look at your watch and it's like running now, 2 hours and 30 minutes. You're like, oh, this is where they're going to end it.
Remember,
and it is still abrupt, but at the same time, like, I disagree with you. I don't think they could have ended it there. There's just way too much they had to cover before.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's just
hard. They could have cut out a lot of the stuff to get there quicker, I think. But as I think about it, the first movie, you have the end battle, the big end battle, the fight at Moria or whatever, or the Mordor, and it's all over. But then they have this last the fight with
Emperor
David
fight.
Bowie. Yeah, and it's like, okay. The
it
one-on-one
was
fight
weird.
is not like a climactic moment when you just had a big epic battle.
And they
that's
hadn't established his sister very well in that movie either. And so
No.
she's just like there. And then she's like this creepy little girl that everybody's afraid of. Or like, what the crap
Yeah.
is going on? Like,
by the time they kill Sting, it's like, okay, and then credits, and you and I cheered. We were so excited when it was over. This one, I was happy it was over, but I was like, why am I am not pumped. You guys did not sell me on the next one. But I mean, gotta go see it. And I told a friend as I was on the way home, I was like, look, I'm gonna go see the next one just because I better be, have to invested this much time into this crap that I want to have something pay off later on. So I'm not saying that they better impress me. I'm just saying, like, I have to finish it. It's like doing like a half marathon. I might as well do the full marathon. And that's how this movie felt. This was my thing, Lance. When Endgame came out, the Avengers, when they were getting ready for the final movie of Phase 3, they actually, well, I guess Spider-Man was the final, but they had big marathon runs where they would show all the MCU movies in certain theaters, and if you went to that event for like 30 hours or whatever, they gave you a little medal or a little pendant for having sat through all that stuff. I really felt deserving of a medal after watching this movie once. You watched it twice. I can't understand that.
I didn't feel like it was long. It wasn't long to me.
We did our review. Josh and Ash, were you in? I don't think you were in the James Bond review. Were you in there with us? You didn't do that with us, right?
No.
We talked about
James Bond though.
How that movie was 2.5 hours. I was shocked. I came back and I was like, it wasn't that long. I pulled it up. It was 2.5 hours.
It was pretty long.
This
it
one,
felt that long
and it
to
didn't
me,
feel
but
like it.
It was okay.
This one I felt was like 4 hours long. And it was just excruciating. Anyway, there were a few good scenes, but I did want to talk about the scene, where they go.
I do have to say this, Tim. No offense. People have said that Dune is Star Wars for adults. So maybe you're just not adult enough for this movie.
I am the first. Look at my wall. I am the first person to admit I am not an adult. But I definitely don't feel like this movie is over my head. Like I just said to Josh, there wasn't that much that I missed in the plot. If I can follow the plot, it wasn't that complicated of a story.
No,
we're talking about some ideas.
That's actually a plus. Again, like I give props to Dennis for making this movie in a way that was like palpable for people that have not read Dune, because you can't tell me that those 90% audience have all read the book.
91.
Yeah.
Of course they haven't. And that's all that rating means. The Rotten Tomatoes means, do you recommend it or not? That's all it is. Good or bad.
It's not 10 out of 10. It's
correct. It's not
either 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't give it 10 out of 10. I would give it a 7. Like it's not Star Wars. I know a lot of some of the trailers are like they always say this, the Star Wars for our generation, and I go,
no, it's not. Yeah, nothing has been. I've never seen the Star Wars of our generation yet.
Yeah.
Okay. But I want to talk about the scene where the first one where the sandworm attacks when they're doing their little cruise around the sandstorm, and then they come upon the factory on the what's it called, the sandcrawler, the Tatooine sandcrawler, the Jawa sandcrawler, and they're doing their mining of spice, and they get there, and then they're like, oh, there's a sandworm coming, and then they send out this probe droid to fly out there and like, yeah, we confirm. You have the royal people up there telling you it's coming, first of all. So, like, I don't understand. You're like, oh, yeah, we have to have all this communication.
Oh, they didn't know, though. If you listen to the communication, they actually asked. They're like, who are you guys? You're not our droid people. And they're like, can you confirm who you are? And he's like, and then he later on says, like, who he is.
All right.
And they're like, okay. Well, even then, they weren't, like, willing to listen because...
They didn't care. And you would think if they're doing something that dangerous that they already have something in place. Like, why isn't that probe droid already looking around to see a big, huge thing of smoke or of dust flying towards them?
It was. It's just that even the one girl couldn't see it. She had to use the special...
The macro binoculars, another Star Wars thing?
She had to use the special binoculars to see it. And she's like, wow, you have really good eyes. So, yeah.
He's like, no, I have this. So he's like, yeah. She said that to the queen. So she, So they're like, okay,
they established that the Harkonnens didn't care about their equipment or their people. So it was sort of like really lax, the workers and stuff. They established that earlier on.
So the king is like, we got to go down. How many people are down there? Like 21. Like, oh, we only have room for 6 each or whatever. And so they're like, okay, well, we got to land. We'll make it work. So they land outside the ship. The blimp part flies away and just disappears. And then they land and they start having people run out. And for some reason, the prince just gets out and starts walking up.
Yeah, and that's not in the book. Again, that's not in the book. And that's why I'm like, that dream sequence, okay, I get what they're trying to do. They got to establish that when Paul gets near Spice, he has his out-of-body experiences.
I didn't get that.
They don't do it very well. Yeah, they sort of.
I'm just sitting there like, why is this kid doing that? And then the dad doesn't know either. They finally he's the last person to get on, like the prince, and they had all this setup for how important he is and everything. And they pull him in there, even all the security on the desert Coruscant planet or city, like all the security measures. But they're like, yeah, just get off and don't help us unload stuff. Just go wander around for a second. They grab him, put him back on, and then they fly off. And then they show just the mouth, and I thought that was really cool. They just showed the mouth of it, and I thought it looked awesome, just to show it, to tease it, and then it swallows the thing, and then it goes back, and then you reveal later why he was wandering out there is because he was having fantasies of Zendaya, and I get that. And if I thought I was running into Zendaya, I'd walk into the mouth of a
totally have fantasies like that of Zendaya all the time.
I would wander out into the sandstorm myself as well. Screw it.
There's a part in that film too that like they could have cut out because I don't understand what the point of it is. But she's like I'm waiting for a shot of the spice that's really good in that scene, and you never really get that. And she like, well, if you fly your copter higher, omnithopter higher, you could get a better view. So he flies it higher, but it's not that much higher. It's like. Like what is the point of this scene? Like just cut it out. It's stupid, but whatever.
Was it like that in the book, the dragonfly things?
Yeah. He's not the kind of author that goes into details. He'll just like establish omnithopter and everybody knows, oh, it's some kind of helicopter, and that's it.
Well, you can't tell me he didn't describe all the liquid concepts in this.
He did. Yeah. And he went into very deep detail on that because he read all these books about that. Like he read like 200 books or something in order to write this one book. Like he was really into ecology and like sand and like desert people culture
and again, as I pointed out in the first one, if I'm going to a desert planet, my obvious issue is going to be like goggles because you're going to have sand in your
yeah, and they didn't have
No, they're like, we're going to focus on breathing, and I'm like, well, that's
that was the other thing. Like he gets off Paul gets off the omnithopter to like go and rescue these people in this big storm sand, and he's like, that's the first time he actually puts on his mask. I'm like, what are those for, man? I mean,
so I had that question when they first land on the Dune planet and whatever it was called, and they get off, and all the armies are all lined up, and they're sitting there in this big formal parade to get off of the docking or the landing gear or the landing platform, the cargo area or whatever. And like you're sitting there and you have half of the people wearing their helmets, and then the royal people don't have their helmets on. And I'm like, okay, so and they talk about the shields, they talk about all this stuff, and you won't be able to move very long, and all this stuff about their suits. But then it's like you have a guy step out with bagpipes. And I'm like, okay, how bad is the air here if you can't breathe, but you have a guy who can go out there and perform his bagpipe performance, and you have some people that don't need the helmets and other people that do need the helmets? Is the helmet just a formality because you're just a knight and we're like the royalty? Like, I was like, can you establish what the crap it is with the environment? Because they spent a lot of time talking about it, but I don't feel like they explained anything. I just had no clue. Just like the shielding, you tried to show me some visuals, but it didn't really make sense what the deal was. So they get out of their gear, and then they have to put on.
I'm surprised, Tim, because usually, I don't know, maybe you're not. This movie was much more about aesthetics than it was about like explaining what was going on. And in a lot of ways, that's almost opposite to the way the books were, because the books would explain a lot about like the world building. And so yeah, sounds to me like you just like world building more than aesthetic, which is fine. But yeah,
I like both. But if you're gonna have a really interesting, a new concept like that was a big part of this world building, is the elements and the weather and everything of this planet, why they're seeking it, how the hermit people have to live the way they do, how the suits work and everything, and all that was like, that's what makes this world interesting. Because I'm sorry, the world itself, the story itself is not that appealing unless you're interested in this world, and I don't give a crap about 30 books about this world. That's why I don't understand its popularity. But I mean, Star Wars is different. Star Wars makes sense. Star Trek stuff makes sense. Whatever. I'm not getting examples, but I'm like, when I watch this movie, I'm like, if you're gonna have weird things happening like that, like a 10-minute conversation about, wow, you're really natural at making your suit work. Well, tell the audience
that wasn't handled very well. In the book, it was handled a lot better. In this movie, she's like, goes up to their suits and she like pulls a strap or something, and then she's like, wow, you really know how to put on a suit. Like, he pulled his straps tight and crazy. But in the actual book, it was a lot more complicated like that. It describes it in a way where it was like, no one could like easily know how to do it unless they'd been trained. And Paul did. And that's where they like, wow, he must be the Messiah because he fulfills this prophecy that says he'll put his suit on okay or whatever. So they sort of blunder that in the movie. I don't like the way they handled it.
In the Matrix, you have the whole thing about telephones, how to get in and out of the planet, how the Matrix works. When you're introduced in a foreign environment, they have just a little dialogue to explain kind of the rules of it, so you can follow what the characters are doing. Armageddon, they have the suits with that have the little thrusters so that they can work in like partially zero G atmospheres, and they have the conversation where the one guy's talking to the black guy and he's like joking around and stuff, and he's like, are you paying attention? Because I'm trying to teach you how if I kick you in the balls, you're not going to fly off into space. And they have just little conversations so that later on when you're seeing them in the aesthetics, you just have a little flavor of the what was the other thing you said? The
world building.
That I'm like, okay, I get it. That's all I need. This one, it felt like they spent a lot of time talking about the liquids, but they had all these other weird things going on, like the environment, the weather, the animal, the weird little meerkat or whatever that was like stuck in the water dew drop, and I'm like, what?
That was there just to be the
sign for what's the freedom is coming for the world and all that stuff.
No, it's just there to be cute. That's the only reason. Well, they have it in the book, and it does show. It does have to do with ecology and how these creatures have learned to survive on this harsh desert planet and all this other stuff. Yeah. But I can guarantee the only reason they have it in there is because it's cute. Now they can sell stuffed animals this Christmas.
You can see the Dune action figures and these Nerf guns and these fake rubber swords and a little meerkat thing. Yeah,
exactly.
All right. Well, last thing I want to talk about, this is one of the messages. There was 2 messages I got in this film. One of them is watch your back. Because you have the conversation in the beginning. The guy's like, you got to watch the door. He's like, I know your footsteps. He's like, no, you don't. And then he appears behind him and he like shows off, right? How many people got shot or stabbed in the back in this movie? There was like 3 or 4. The king gets the probe in the back. The girl gets stabbed in the back when she's setting off the drone thing. Momoa gets stabbed in the front, then he attacks the other guys from the back. It was like, it kept happening. And then Zendaya pops up behind him at the end sequence when he went up the high spot, and she's like, I wouldn't have let you kill my friends. It's like, hey, watch your back. That's message number 1 in this film. As I was like, Lance,
that's funny.
You saw the movie twice, Lance. You got my back. So right here. But the other thing is dreams. This is interesting. In the beginning, before the movie starts, there's the line, Zendaya says it, but she says, dreams are messages from the deep. And I think that's cool. I mean,
that was like a quote or something, or is that something she said?
It's what it said. There was like a caption of it before, 20th Century Fox, whatever, before it started, but that was the line. Dreams are messages from the deep.
See, that's funny because I didn't really feel like that was a strong theme in the book. And in this one, like you said, and I've already mentioned, the dream stuff, maybe that's a pet hobby horse of Dennis is that he likes the dream aspect of it. But
it's cool, and that's how they sold the movie with the trailers. It was all about the dream sequences, and they obviously love those shots. And they,
I mean, he does in the book. He does have dreams, but they're always just as a way to prophesy of the future type thing. Yeah. It's never like, oh, dreams are really cool, or it's never really a theme. But
so Aquaman said when he's telling him in the hangar bay, Aquaman goes, dream, after he says you're gonna die, and then suddenly he just misses the dream. He's like, well,
everything important happens while you're awake.
Exactly. Says dreams make good stories, but everything important happens when you're awake.
That's in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler.
Well, we're already spoiled. We're good. He says, because that's when we make things happen. Yeah. And that reminded me of the quote from Dumbledore, if we're going to talk about the first Harry Potter movie, when he's looking at the Mirror of Erised, which is desire backwards or whatever. He says, it does not do well to dwell on dreams and forget to live. So I just wanted to talk about a little bit about that, and to throw a little bit about of the church doctrine in here with the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. One of our prophets, and this is my favorite quote about dreams at all and about revelation. This is by Harold B. Lee, who was one of our prophets. He said, "Now there is one more way in which revelations may come, and that is by dreams. Oh, I'm not going to tell you that every dream you have is a direct revelation from the Lord, but I fear that it is in this day of sophistication there are those of us who are prone to rule out all dreams as of no purpose and of no moment. And yet, all through the scriptures, there are recorded incidents where the Lord, by dreams, has directed his people." Now, I thought that was interesting with the contrast of Jason Momoa's character, who's like, "Oh, you saw me finding the people, then that's a great omen." And then he says, "Yeah, but you're gonna die." He's like, "Oh, well, never mind. This is a dream. It doesn't mean anything, right?" There's this dismissing, and I just thought it's an interesting concept because
and that's a big theme of Dune, both the book and the movie, is you have this world that's very sci-fi, and you've got a lot of people that are very science,
right?
And very and yet then you got the Ben Gesserit, and Paul even struggles with that. He's like, "You've been Gesserit witches," and she's like, "Well, we prepared these people, and you're part of prophecy." He's like, "Yeah, just that's because you fed their minds to think that," and so it's back to like faith versus science, and it does deal with that theme a lot in both the book and this, and it's interesting.
There's a point where he was pissed off in the tent or whatever. He was like, "Matt, you made me. It's your fault. I'm like this." And he
yells at his mom. And even the Duke is like, "No, I don't want you to tell me." He asked her, "Will you protect your son?" And she's like, "With my life." And he's like, "No, I don't want it. I don't want you as a mother saying that. I want, what about the Ben Gesserit?
Yes.
Like, I want her to say she's gonna."
Yeah.
So and the original author, what's his name, Herbert, he was very much like, I don't think he was a very religious guy. He saw a religion as mostly just a way to manipulate the masses. But I think even in his book, though, he sort of treated faith a lot more fairly than he would have originally, and it's interesting, that theme.
He, I think in the message, at least from what I saw in the movie, there's practicality, or not. Well, I guess like you say, from the scientific mind, hearing about dreams, people can be like, well, there's coincidences, and they can dismiss it, just like any sign of faith or act or revelation or anything. Like, nothing's going to convert someone unless they believe in it, and that's what he was mad. He was mad because they manipulated to force them to believe in this stuff. Right. And Jason Momoa's character was like, he was willing to believe the parts that were good, but
he was more like he didn't want to think about it. And there's a lot of people in the world like that. They just don't want to think about it. They want to be like the hotshot pilot, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'm gonna go fly my plane type, attitude.
Yeah, and he was being really whimsical too. It was kind of a fun bonding moment between the show, the relationship early in the movie. But it's an important thing where he had to slowly come to grips with his ability and that he was being spoken to. And interestingly, it's just like as members of the church, we have patriarchal blessings where we have a specific blessing given by someone that gives us kind of ideas and kind of prophecies and promises for our lives. If we live righteously, then we'll be able to fulfill all the things in those promises in our blessing. We get one in our life, and that's part of our church. And you can say a lot of the things that he sees are going to happen, but they don't actually come into fruition the way that he expected. And that's why he was kind of baffled later on when it happened. And I think with that quote with President Lee, he was just kind of saying, be mindful of, you might be one of the people that the Lord does speak to in dreams. And it is kind of a chosen. I think dreams are a spiritual gift that some people have and some people don't. I'm not talking about people that you can pay to read your palms and all that kind of stuff and soothsayers in the world, but I'm talking about in our lives, and not even just members of the church. The Lord does talk to people through dreams, and I believe that. And I think one cool thing about this movie is that it's not necessarily what we expect, but it's something, and it's going to be something that's on our mind, right? We're taught in our revelation in the church that sometimes the Lord just is going to keep something in our mind that's going to be persistent in our thoughts. That's going to be Him keeping us reminded, or just really drilling in that that's what we're supposed to be thinking about. Or doubts can be the same way. He had this vision of Zendaya throughout all the time. He was thinking about her, kind of like me. All the time I'm thinking about Zendaya. Like, he's having these dreams.
No, but it's true. Like no matter what, my experience in life is no matter what, if you have a faith promoting experience, no matter what, there's always going to be a way to explain it away. There's always going to be, like, if you really want to explain it away somehow, you're always going to find a way. It doesn't matter that those explanations are so far-fetched that they're like more far-fetched than just having the dream or vision.
Right.
It's just, that's part of the test of why we're here, is to like see, are we willing to, no matter how much spirituality or knowledge we gain, are we willing to choose to believe, or are we just gonna like try to look for excuses to explain it away? So
it's just like science is the same way. Scientists can also prove and verify things that someone can believe through their faith, and it's if they look at it through that eye, if it strengthens their faith or detracts from their faith. That's why I like how he presently says, there are those of us who are prone to rule out all dreams as of no purpose, and that's why people don't, often if you try and share your dreams with people, a lot of times
here we go again. Well, that's because they were Spanish missionaries in California, Tim, and everyone had a dream last night about the Virgin Mary, and so
there you go.
Here we go again.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just something to think about. I like some of the thoughts in this. It's not like this was a motive from the director or the writers, but because I'm sure they have this quote in mind. But I thought it was really relevant that he's working towards something that was on the front of his mind. He didn't understand what it was. He doesn't understand his abilities, or he's at least trying to develop his abilities. And yet, as he works towards it, things do come true. And we know in the next part of the story, he's going to have a very close and kind of eternal relationship with Zendaya. And that's the fulfillment of that. And he's just kind of leading. But it's not about his personal satisfaction or gratification being with her because she's like a beautiful woman or whatever. But it's a fulfillment of his destiny as a leader and redeeming this world.
Oh, so that's where that's one theme that I actually hate, that they often have, but it's a very common theme in fantasy movies.
The chosen one?
The fated love.
Oh.
And in the movie it handles it. He sees her and he's like, and he's about to you're the girl I saw in my dream, but then he's like, oh, never mind. He stops himself.
I like also how this is one thing for her acting when he saw her, and like I said, his expression didn't show me that he even cared that he saw her. I thought he'd been like a little shock and then keep it to himself. But she did not act or talk the way she did in the dreams, where she's like this prophetess, priestess, kind of a enchanting woman, and then he sees her and she's like, yeah, I was gonna let you kill my friends, and they start walking. He's like, yeah, hurry up, keep up, whatever,
Well, and one theme that the book really hit on that the movie doesn't as much is the idea that marriage, especially we live in a special time in the history of Earth where marriage is usually, because of Hollywood, because of media, we think that marriage is all about love. But in the books, they very much establish it, and you sort of get that theme coming out where he's like, I should have married you, but you're just my concubine. But and Paul also says, oh, I'm gonna marry the princess. He mentions that in the movie, so that we can that's one of his plans, before they remind him that, oh, you're just a boy hiding in a sand hole.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I don't know, how are they going to handle it? In the book, I think he really does fall in love with Zendaya. And this is just going to be, oh, my dream said I'm going to kiss you, so here we go, let's kiss? Or is it gonna be like in the first movie? They handled it with a montage of like 10 seconds. Like,
Of
okay,
nothing,
now
yeah,
they're in
like I
love
said.
for some reason.
Yeah, they definitely did. They definitely told, not showed, that they were in love
Yeah.
in the first one. So we'll see where it goes. But I think it's a cool concept. You don't see a lot of movies that kind of illustrate and talk about dreams, and we have a different perspective on it as believers of whatever, anyone, not just in our church, but. Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool, and that's one thing I enjoyed about the messages in this movie, and that slowly got there. The concept too that Aquaman said and Dumbledore says, don't forget to live, and it's all about what we're doing in real life. That's what makes it. That's the exciting part. That's the adventure, and that's what makes it worth it. That's where the important things happen. He said. So work towards your dreams and have faith in your dreams and look for purposes faithfully, and don't be crazy and unrealistic about it, and don't pay people to interpret your dreams. I'll say that. So, anyway, I thought that was neat, but the movie's fine. I see why people like it. I can't understand why so many people are like raving about it. Like for like a popcorn movie,
7
a
out
lot
of
of
10 for me. It's
Yeah.
not like I'm not raving about it. I enjoyed it. I watched it a second time. I probably won't watch it again until the new movie comes out. But yeah.
Exactly, that's the thing. I'll watch it before I see it again. It's not one I'm gonna buy. I don't like it that much. Other than that, I wouldn't watch it. But whatever. If you watch this, thank you. Thanks for. If you sat through this, it doesn't show a lot of endurance. We already sat through Dune. Sorry, we weren't quite as entertaining. But I was telling someone else, there wasn't a lot of fun in this movie. There wasn't a lot of jokes. There
No,
wasn't
it's a
that
very
much
like you said,
moody.
it has a level of maturity in terms of themes and just ideas that isn't that level that Star Wars was at.
No, that's an action adventure fun movie with comedy
Yeah.
in it, or like a Marvel movie. Same thing. It's the same formula. This
Yeah.
was just like
This is a movie. The other thing about this movie you got to understand is this is not. I would argue that the book, especially the book, is not a sci-fi book. I mean, it always gets placed in the sci-fi, and I get it. They got spaceships. It's in space. It wants to be a fantasy book. It really does. It's about dukes. It's about love, and it's about it's about war fighting, and the author never goes into detail on how the technology works. So it's funny you say that about the movie, because it sort of doesn't either. And it's about knights. It's about
I get what you're saying. Yeah. If this didn't have ships going to another planet and were knights riding horses to go to another land having the exact same plot, it'd be a fantasy story. But yeah, it's just packaged differently.
It's
All
not
right.
Star Trek where it's like, oh, look at my tricorder, and then
Yeah. All right.
having like intellectual conversations about things. And,
Right.
yeah.
Well, Lance, thanks for doing all your homework and being prepared
That
and
book
watching.
report.
And we will be back to watch Dune 3 in 2023.
Dune 2.
Dune 2. Oh, if they make a third one, okay. God. That second one's going to be so much Silmarillion stuff thrown in there to drag it out that much. But anyway, thanks, Lance, for being here. And thanks for watching. If you made it to the end of this, you're awesome. And we'll catch you next time on Saints on Cinema. See ya.
Bye.